Behind every story lies a truth waiting to be uncovered. Click subscribe and let's uncover it together. The funeral and the will reading. The morning sky over Cedarwood was heavy with clouds, pressing low against the small town as though even nature mourned Robert Harris's passing. The church was filled with the hushed murmur of neighbors, relatives, and old friends. Everyone knew Robert. He had been the proud owner of Harris Lumber, a business his family had run for nearly 3 generations. His death left a hole not only in the family but also in the community. Mary Harris stood near the front pew, her black dress plain but neat, her hair pulled back with the same care she'd always shown her father during his last years. She clasped her hands tightly, the skin raw from endless hours of caretaking in his final months. To anyone watching, she looked like the dutiful daughter she had always been. But behind her calm face, her mind replayed every sleepless night, every hospital visit, every whispered thank you from her father that no one else seemed to hear. Beside her, her younger brother Tom shifted impatiently, checking his watch as though eager for the service to end. His wife leaned in, whispering, "Once the will is read, everything will change. Finally, we'll have what we deserve." Mary's stomach tightened. She wanted to believe that fairness would prevail, that her father, who had seen her devotion day after day, would not forget her. But a small voice whispered doubts. Tom had always been the golden child, charming, reckless, yet somehow still adored. Mary was the invisible one, the dependable one, the daughter expected to sacrifice without complaint. The pastor's voice brought her back. Robert was a man of integrity, of hard work, and of love for his family. Today we honor his legacy. As the service ended, people filed past Mary, offering condolences. "He was proud of you, Mary," an elderly neighbor said softly. Mary smiled weakly, holding on to those words as a lifeline. But her heart pounded with dread when the lawyer, Mr. Collins, invited the immediate family to gather in the office downtown for the will reading. The office smelled faintly of polished wood and leather, the air tense with unspoken rivalries. Mary sat quietly, clutching her purse, while Tom sprawled confidently in his chair, his grin almost smug. Their cousins, distant relatives, and a few family friends filled the room, though everyone knew the real question: who would inherit Harris Lumber, the house, and Robert's estate? Mr. Collins adjusted his glasses and opened a thick folder. "This is the last will and testament of Robert Harris," he began. His voice was steady, professional. Mary leaned forward, every muscle taut. "To my beloved son, Thomas Harris," Collins read, "I leave the family business, Harris Lumber, including all assets, accounts, and properties associated with it." Tom's grin widened. His wife squeezed his arm, triumphant. Collins continued, "To my daughter, Mary Harris." He paused briefly, and Mary's breath caught. "I leave my love and gratitude for her care during my illness." A hush fell over the room. Mary's ears rang, the words echoing like a cruel joke. Love and gratitude. Nothing more, no house, no savings, not even a token heirloom. Tom chuckled under his breath. "Guess Dad didn't think you were up for responsibility after all, sis." Mary's face burned. She forced herself to remain composed, but inside she felt as though the ground had been ripped from beneath her feet. She had given years of her life, her own career, her relationships, her freedom, to care for her father. And this was her reward? The aftermath. Voices filled the room. Congratulations to Tom. Murmurs about how fitting it was for him to carry the business forward. Mary barely heard them. She sat frozen, replaying the lawyer's words in her head. Her cousin leaned over, whispering, "Mary, I'm so sorry. You deserved more than that." But Tom's voice cut through. "Don't pity her. Dad made his choice. Maybe if she had shown a little more ambition, things would be different." Mary stood abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. "Ambition?" Her voice trembled but grew stronger. "I was there every night when Dad couldn't breathe. I was there when he needed someone to hold his hand." "Where were you, Tom? Out golfing? On vacations? You don't know a thing about sacrifice." Tom smirked. "Sacrifice doesn't pay the bills. Dad trusted me with the company because I can handle it. You can't. The room went silent. Mary's chest rose and fell with the weight of her anger, but she swallowed back tears. She refused to give Tom the satisfaction of seeing her break. I need some air, she whispered, rushing out before the walls closed in. Mary's reflection. Outside, the sky had darkened further, rain threatening to fall. Mary walked quickly, her heels clicking against the sidewalk, until she found herself at the small park across the street. She sat heavily on a bench, finally letting the tears spill. How could her father do this? She had believed in him, believed that he saw her. Every smile, every thank you, every squeeze of his hand had felt like recognition. But now, it all seemed meaningless. Maybe I was just a fool, she thought bitterly. Maybe I was never enough. A memory surfaced, her father's frail voice whispering one night, "You've been my rock, Mary. I don't know what I'd do without you." Had those words meant nothing? She wiped her eyes and stared at the looming office building. Inside, Tom was probably already planning renovations, boasting about his inheritance. Mary clenched her fists. She had no money, no claim, and no support. But she had something Tom didn't, the truth of her devotion. She didn't know it yet, but the story wasn't over. A secret still waited to be uncovered, one that would turn everything upside down. Mary stayed home for days after the will was read. The betrayal pressed on her chest like a weight she couldn't shake. She had given her life to caring for her father, only to be erased when it mattered most. The silence of her apartment was suffocating. She kept replaying memories, holding her father's hand during late nights of pain, feeding him when he was too weak, whispering comfort when he cried out for help. And now, all she had were empty words and a will, love and gratitude. Tom's visit. On the third morning, a knock shook her door, not a gentle knock, but a pounding. When she opened it, Tom strolled in without waiting for permission, a smug grin on his face. "Brought the paperwork," he said, tossing a thick envelope on her table. "Company, house, estate. It's all mine. Thought I'd give you the chance to accept it." Mary's jaw tightened. "You didn't need to bring this here." Tom leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Sure I did. Because I know you, you'll sulk, pretend Dad made a mistake. Let me remind you, he trusted me." Her voice cut sharp. "Trusted you? You never showed up when he needed you. Where were you during the worst nights?" Tom shrugged. "Busy building my own life. You chose to play nurse. That was your decision." Mary's hands trembled with anger. "I was there because I loved him. You can't dismiss that." Tom smirked, lowering his voice. "Love doesn't build businesses. Gratitude doesn't pay the bills. Maybe Dad finally saw you for what you are, not cut out for the real world." Mary forced her voice steady. "Take your papers and get out." He chuckled, scooped up the envelope, and walked to the door. "Fine. But remember, sis, you've got nothing now. Nothing." When the door slammed, the silence roared in her ears. The family gathering. That weekend, her mother, Elaine, invited her over. Mary hoped for comfort, but what she found instead was a celebration of Tom. The house buzzed with laughter. Relatives congratulated him, raising glasses of wine to toast his success. Mary stood in the corner, her chest tight. Tom lifted his glass. To Dad's legacy, and to keeping it alive. The room echoed with cheers. Mary finally asked her mother, "Mom, do you really believe Dad wanted me to have nothing, after everything I did?" Elaine avoided her gaze. "Your father's decision must be respected, Mary. Tom is better suited to lead." Mary's heart cracked. Better suited? He abandoned Dad when he was sick. Tom smirked. "There she goes again, playing the victim." Mary's voice rose, trembling. It wasn't about the company. It was about love, about being seen. The room went still. Her mother's tone was sharp. "Enough. He's gone. Let this go." For Mary, the words cut deeper than the will itself. Even her mother had dismissed her. A night of despair. Back home, Mary sat at her kitchen table surrounded by unpaid bills. She had no savings, no security, no family support. For the first time, she felt utterly alone. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "What do I do now?" And then, like a spark in the dark, she remembered something her father had said not long before his death. "Mary, you've always been my anchor. I wish I could show you just how much that means." Had he really meant to leave her with nothing? Deep down, she didn't believe it. A seed of suspicion. The next day, Mary visited the church where his funeral had been held. Pastor James greeted her warmly. "Your father spoke often of you," he said. "He said he wished the world knew how much you'd done for him. He never spoke of cutting you out." Mary froze. If her father had never intended this, then something was wrong. Maybe Tom had influenced him. Maybe another document existed. Maybe her father had left something behind that no one had seen. She walked out of the church with a new resolve. The truth was hidden somewhere, and she would find it. Mary's determination carried her through the following days. She replayed every word Pastor James had said. He never spoke of cutting you out. It didn't line up with the will, with Tom's smug certainty, or with the way her father had always leaned on her. That night, Mary sat at her kitchen table, staring at a photo of her father in his favorite chair, glasses perched low on his nose. His eyes held kindness but also a guarded intensity, as if he always had something left unsaid. Maybe he tried to leave me something. Maybe he did, and it got buried. Searching the old house. The next morning, Mary drove back to her childhood home, now legally Tom's. She parked down the street, her hands gripping the steering wheel. The house looked unchanged. White siding, blue shutters, the porch swing that creaked in the wind. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like enemy territory. Tom's black SUV was gone. Good. She grabbed her spare key, one Tom hadn't bothered to collect, and slipped inside. The smell of coffee and old wood filled her nose. Her chest tightened as she stepped into the living room where her father had once spent countless evenings with her. She began to search, drawers, cabinets, desk files, everywhere. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, only that she would know when she found it. Hours passed. Dust clung to her hands, papers stacked high around her. Frustration boiled. Maybe this was pointless. Maybe her father's words were nothing more than comfort at the end of his life. Then, in the back of his old roll-top desk, her fingers brushed something wedged under the false bottom. She tugged, and a sealed envelope emerged, yellowed with age, her name written in his handwriting. For Mary. Her breath caught. The letter. Mary tore the envelope open with trembling hands. Inside was a handwritten letter dated 3 months before his death. My dearest Mary, if you are reading this, it means something went wrong. I never intended to leave you without recognition for all you've done. You've been my constant, my strength when I had none. I fear Tom may pressure me or twist things, but know this. I trust you. I've made arrangements you may not know about, but they are meant to protect you. Search the safe deposit box at First Cedar Bank. The key is hidden beneath the floorboard of my study, where I kept our family Bible. It will lead you to what is rightfully yours. With love and gratitude, always, Dad. Mary pressed the paper to her chest, tears spilling down her cheeks. Relief surged through her like a wave. She hadn't been wrong. Her father had seen her. He had left her something. The study and the key. Her father's study was dim and quiet. She knelt near the bookshelf where the family Bible sat, its leather cracked with age. Carefully, she pulled it aside and pried at the floorboard. It lifted with a soft groan, revealing a small velvet pouch. Inside lay a tiny brass key. Mary's fingers tightened around it. She could almost hear her father's voice. You're stronger than you think, Mary. At that moment, the front door slammed. Mary? Tom's voice boomed through the house. Her heart leapt. She shoved the pouch into her pocket, hurriedly placing the Bible back. Tom's footsteps echoed closer. What are you doing here? Mary stood, forcing her voice calm. Visiting. Is that a crime? His eyes narrowed, scanning the disarray on the desk. You're snooping. Pathetic. Mary squared her shoulders. I don't need to explain myself to you. Tom stepped closer, his tone sharp. Dad's decision is final. Don't think you can dig through his things and find a loophole. Her hand pressed against the pouch in her pocket. He didn't know. Not yet. I'm leaving, she said, pushing past him. For the first time, she felt a spark of power. The bank visit. The next morning, Mary walked into First Cedar Bank, her father's longtime institution. Her palms sweated as she approached the counter. I need to access a safe deposit box, she told the clerk, sliding the key forward. The clerk typed a few things into the computer, then nodded. Yes, this matches an active account. Right this way. In the vault, the air was cool and heavy. The clerk handed her a long metal box. Mary opened it slowly. Inside were folders, a small stack of sealed envelopes, and a flash drive. The first folder contained legal documents, trust agreements, stock certificates, property titles. Her eyes widened. Many were signed in her name. Her father had transferred assets quietly, bypassing the will. The envelopes contained letters, each addressed to her, each echoing his gratitude and faith in her. And then, the flash drive, labeled simply, "For Mary, when the time is right." The realization. Mary sank into the vault's chair, overwhelmed. Her father had seen through Tom's arrogance, through the bias of the family. He had created a hidden safety net, a private legacy only for her. She whispered, "You trusted me after all." But with relief came fear. If Tom discovered this, he wouldn't stop until he ripped it away. Mary knew she had to act quickly. She needed an ally, someone who could navigate the legal and financial implications. She thought of Pastor James, of his kindness, but this required more than guidance. It required strategy. She folded the documents, slipped the drive into her bag, and walked out of the bank with a new determination. A silent resolve. Back home, Mary placed the letter beside her bed. She reread it again and again until the words felt engraved in her soul. Her father had believed in her. That belief fueled her resolve. She would not let Tom strip away her dignity, nor would she let her family's dismissal define her. For the first time in weeks, she slept peacefully, knowing the battle ahead would not be fought empty-handed. Because now, she had the truth. Mary woke the next morning with clarity she hadn't felt in weeks. The letter and the safe deposit box had changed everything. Her father hadn't abandoned her. He had trusted her more than anyone. The relief was sweet, but it carried with it a new responsibility, protecting what he left behind. She brewed a cup of coffee, spread the documents across her small kitchen table, and studied them carefully. The trust agreements, the stock transfers, even a deed to a lake cabin she had never known about. It was all in her name. Her father had hidden this legacy like a buried treasure, waiting for her to uncover it. But Tom wouldn't sit quietly if he found out. She could already hear his mocking voice. Pathetic Mary, still chasing ghosts. Only now she had proof. The attorney's office. Mary made an appointment with an attorney recommended by Pastor James. His name was Daniel Harris, a seasoned estate lawyer with sharp eyes and a calm voice. When she laid the documents and the letter on his desk, he studied them for several long minutes. Finally, he looked up. Mary, what you've brought me changes everything. Her hands trembled slightly. So these are valid? He really meant for me to have this? Daniel nodded. Absolutely. These are legally binding. The will may give Tom the company and estate, but your father transferred these assets privately. That means no one, not even Tom, can contest them without hard evidence of fraud. And this letter? It shows clear intent. Tears welled in her eyes. I thought I was erased. Daniel leaned forward. You weren't erased. You were protected. Mary's chest swelled with a mixture of relief and vindication. For the first time, she wasn't powerless. Tom's discovery. But Tom wasn't oblivious. A week later, he showed up at her door again, this time furious. You've been to the bank, he snapped, his voice low and dangerous. Mary froze. How do you... I have contacts, he cut in. Don't play dumb. I know Dad had accounts. If you think you can squirrel away something that belongs to the family... Her courage rose like a tide. No, Tom. It doesn't belong to the family. It belongs to me. Dad made sure of it. His face darkened. You're lying. She walked to the table, picked up the letter, and held it out. Read it yourself. He snatched it from her hands, eyes scanning quickly. His jaw clenched. This doesn't mean anything. It's just words. I'll fight this. Mary's voice didn't waver. Then fight, because I'm not afraid of you anymore. The public unraveling. Tom underestimated Mary's resolve. With Daniel's guidance, she filed the trust documents with the court, ensuring they became part of the public record. Word spread quickly through Cedar Falls. While Tom had inherited the family business, Mary had quietly become the steward of a significant private estate. At the next family gathering, whispers filled the room. Cousins, uncles, and even old friends shifted their attention from Tom to Mary. One relative leaned close to her and whispered, "We never knew. He always spoke so highly of you, but none of us realized how much he trusted you." Tom stormed into the room, red-faced. "This is ridiculous. Dad left me the company. She doesn't deserve a thing." Mary stood tall. "Dad didn't see it that way. He trusted both of us, but in different ways. You got the company. I got his faith." The room fell silent. For once, Tom had no clever retort. His control over the narrative was slipping. Mother's realization. Later that night, Mary's mother, Elaine, pulled her aside. Her face was pale, her voice trembling. I didn't know," Elaine whispered. "Your father never told me about the trust. I thought he doubted you." Mary swallowed hard. "So did I. For weeks I thought he'd forgotten me, but he didn't." Elaine's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Mary. I should have seen what you did for him. I should have defended you." Mary's throat tightened. "All I ever wanted was to matter, to him and to you." Elaine reached for her hand. "You always mattered. I just let myself believe Tom's story. That was my mistake." The words didn't erase the pain, but they cracked something open. For the first time in years, Mary felt a sliver of healing. Tom's desperation. Tom, however, wasn't ready to let go. He called Mary late one night, his voice shaking with anger. "You think this is over? I'll drag you through court. I'll make sure everyone knows you manipulated him." Mary's reply was steady. "Go ahead, Tom, but the truth is on my side, and deep down, you know it." For a long moment, the line was silent. Then came the sound of a bitter laugh. "You've changed, sis. I don't like it." Mary hung up without another word. Mary's resolve. She sat by the window afterward, the night air cool against her face. The path forward wouldn't be easy. Tom would keep fighting, and there would be more family fractures to face. But she wasn't the same woman who had been dismissed at the will reading. Her father had left her more than assets. He had left her courage, validation, and proof that her love hadn't gone unnoticed. Mary whispered into the night, "Thank you, Dad. I'll honor this." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Tom had always been the loudest voice in the family, the self-appointed leader, the man who demanded attention. But after Mary filed her father's hidden documents in court, the balance of power began to shift. People who once brushed past her at family events now sought her out. Neighbors stopped her in the grocery store to say they admired her courage. Even local reporters caught wind of the story. "Overlooked daughter uncovers secret trust," read one headline in the Cedar Falls Gazette. For the first time in her life, Mary wasn't invisible. She was undeniable. Tom's legal threats. But Tom wasn't finished. One Monday morning, a thick envelope arrived at Mary's apartment, a legal summons. He was suing her, claiming undue influence over their father. Her stomach churned as she read the words. Tom was accusing her of manipulating their father into creating the trust. At Daniel's office, she dropped the papers onto his desk. "He won't stop, will he?" Daniel adjusted his glasses, scanning the documents. "This is desperation. His case is weak. Your father's signatures are authenticated, and the timeline matches perfectly. Still, you'll need to prepare for a fight." Mary's chest tightened. "I don't want this to turn into a circus." Daniel gave a small smile. "Sometimes the truth needs a stage." The first court hearing. The courtroom was small, wood-paneled, and packed with spectators. Tom strutted in like he owned the place, flanked by an expensive-looking lawyer. Mary sat quietly beside Daniel, clutching her father's letter like a shield. When Tom took the stand, his voice dripped with false concern. I loved my father. But in his final months, Mary was always there, whispering in his ear, controlling his choices. I believe she pressured him into making changes that don't reflect his true wishes. Gasps rippled through the audience. Mary's face burned with humiliation. But Daniel rose calmly. Objection, Your Honor. The documents were notarized months before Mr. Williams's final decline. We have letters, recordings, and witnesses to prove his intent. The judge nodded. Proceed. Mary's turn came. She stood, hands trembling, and read from her father's letter. Mary, you've always been my anchor. I trust you. Her voice cracked, but she didn't falter. When she sat down, the silence in the room was heavy. The community response news spread quickly. By evening, the local station ran a feature on the case, painting Tom as greedy and Mary as the faithful daughter fighting for justice. Social media exploded with support. Comments poured in. She deserves everything her father left her. Families like this tear each other apart with greed. Stay strong, Mary. You're an inspiration. For the first time, Tom wasn't the hero of the family story. He was the villain. And Mary? She was the unexpected protagonist. A crumbling facade. Behind closed doors, Tom's anger boiled. He stormed into Elaine's house one night, shouting, "Why are people siding with her? This is supposed to be mine." Elaine's voice was weary. "Because she earned it, Tom. Your father trusted her in ways you never understood." He slammed his fist on the table. "You're taking her side now?" Elaine's eyes were sad but steady. "I'm not taking sides. I'm facing the truth." Tom's face twisted. "She's poisoned you too." But Elaine didn't flinch. For the first time in years, she didn't cower under his temper. She had seen the truth with her own eyes, and she couldn't unsee it. Mary's quiet strength. Mary, meanwhile, poured herself into understanding her inheritance. She met with financial advisors, visited the lake cabin, and even found old journals her father had left behind. Each step grounded her more deeply in his trust, his belief, his love. At night, she lit a candle by his photo and whispered, "I won't let you down." She knew the road ahead was far from over. Tom would fight, and the courts could drag on. But she also knew something had changed. She was no longer the forgotten daughter. She was her father's chosen legacy bearer, and she would not give that up. The turning point one Friday afternoon, Daniel called with news. The judge denied Tom's motion to freeze the trust assets. "You're free to manage them as intended." Mary exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Relief washed over her. Tom had tried to block her, but the law was on her side. For the first time, she saw him clearly, not as the powerful older brother she once feared, but as a man unraveling under his own greed. That night, as she sat by the window, the town lights twinkling below, Mary realized something profound. The turning point wasn't just about winning legal battles. It was about reclaiming her voice, her place, her worth. She whispered into the darkness, "This is only the beginning." The courtroom had been buzzing for weeks. Everyone was following the Williams inheritance battle, the ruthless Tom against the underestimated Mary. Reporters filled the benches, their pens scratching across notebooks while cameras flashed as Mary entered the courtroom. She looked calm, her posture straight, her eyes sharper than anyone remembered. But beneath that composure, Mary's heart pounded. She knew this day would be pivotal. For weeks, she had quietly worked with her lawyer, digging deeper into the contents of her late father's safety deposit box. The letter had been the first spark, but there had been more, much more. Inside the box, tucked beneath legal documents and trust papers, Mary had found a small sealed envelope and a black USB drive. The envelope was labeled in her father's familiar handwriting, "For Mary, when the time is right." When her lawyer inserted the USB into a computer, they uncovered files that were nothing short of explosive. Bank statements, confidential memos, and even personal notes from her father, revealed a truth Mary had suspected but never dared to believe. Tom had been drowning in debt for years. Gambling debts, failed investments, even a mortgage on his own home, all covered up with charm and bluster. Their father had known it all. More than that, her father had taken steps to ensure Tom wouldn't destroy the family legacy. He had transferred key assets into a trust, naming Mary as the true beneficiary, while the public will was deliberately misleading, designed to test character, loyalty, and responsibility. Mary's throat tightened when she read one particular note from her father. "Mary, if you are reading this, it means the mask has finally slipped from your brother's face. Do not let his greed destroy what I worked for. You were always the one with quiet strength. The world may overlook you, but I never did. Trust yourself." That single line, "The world may overlook you, but I never did," burned into her memory. Now, as she sat in the courtroom, she knew the time had come to reveal what her father had left behind. The judge called the session to order, and Tom's lawyer stood to deliver his closing arguments. He painted Mary as manipulative, claiming she had fabricated evidence and misinterpreted their father's wishes. Tom sat smirking, arms crossed, his confidence radiating across the room. Then it was Mary's turn. She rose, walked slowly to the center, and nodded at her lawyer. Her hands trembled slightly as she held up the envelope and the USB. "Your Honor," her lawyer began, "we have new evidence directly from Mr. Williams, stored securely in his safety deposit box. This evidence will prove that Mary Williams was always the intended heir, not out of favoritism, but out of foresight and protection." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Tom's smirk faltered. The lawyer handed the documents to the judge, who began reading aloud. Statements of debt, letters outlining Tom's reckless behavior, the trust papers naming Mary, and finally, the handwritten note that silenced the room. Mary closed her eyes as the words echoed. "The world may overlook you, but I never did." The spectators shifted uncomfortably. Reporters scribbled furiously. Tom's face turned crimson as the truth unraveled before him. For years, Tom had crafted an image of success: expensive suits, lavish dinners, bold declarations of leadership. But the mask had slipped. The debts, the lies, the greed, it was all exposed now. Mary glanced at her brother. His jaw clenched, his fists tightened, but his eyes betrayed fear. For the first time, Tom looked small. "Your Honor," Mary said softly, her voice steady, "my father wasn't blind to who we were. He knew Tom's weaknesses. He knew my strength. He prepared for this. He trusted me, even when no one else did." The judge leaned forward, scanning the final page of the trust documents. After a long pause, he looked directly at Tom. "It appears, Mr. Williams, that your father left no ambiguity. The trust is legal, binding, and clear. The true heir to the Williams estate is Mary Williams." The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed for the exits to break the news. Mary's lawyer placed a steady hand on her shoulder, whispering, "It's over. You did it." But Mary wasn't smiling. Not yet. She looked at Tom, who sat frozen in his chair. His empire of arrogance had collapsed in minutes. She almost felt pity. Almost. But then she remembered the years of dismissal, the cruel smirks, the way he and her mother had treated her as invisible. No, pity wasn't the right word. This was justice. That night, the story dominated headlines. Greedy heir exposed, hidden debts destroy Tom Williams's claim. Overlooked daughter emerges as true beneficiary. Father's secret plan revealed, trust in Mary. Mary read the articles in silence. It wasn't about the money. It was about something far deeper, validation. Her father had believed in her, even when no one else did. His plan had protected her, and now the world finally saw her for who she was. She thought back to that Christmas years ago, when she sat at the dinner table and listened as the company was handed to Tom. The shame, the silence, the crushing sense of invisibility. And now, she wasn't invisible anymore. Her phone buzzed with messages, some from relatives, some from strangers who were inspired by her story. "You give me hope," one message read. "I've always been the overlooked one too. Thank you for showing us we can rise. Mary smiled softly. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was about every overlooked soul who had ever been told they weren't enough. But as she closed her laptop, she knew the story wasn't over. Tom wasn't the type to go down quietly. His debts were still looming, his pride still burning, and his hunger for control was far from extinguished. Mary whispered to herself, the fight might be over, but the war isn't done yet. And with that, she prepared for the final chapter. The days after the courtroom victory felt surreal to Mary. Reporters camped outside her home, journalists flooded her inbox, and strangers approached her on the street to offer congratulations. To the outside world, she was a symbol of triumph, the overlooked daughter who had risen against all odds. But behind closed doors, Mary struggled with a mix of emotions. Relief, yes. Validation, absolutely. But also grief. Grief for the years lost to being dismissed. Grief for the fractured family bonds. Grief for the brother she had once loved despite everything. Tom, meanwhile, disappeared from the spotlight. The media uncovered more of his reckless spending, more unpaid debts, and whispers of people he had wronged. Once the golden boy of the Williams family, Tom had become a cautionary tale. One evening, as Mary sat alone in her study, she heard a knock at the door. Hesitant, she opened it to find Tom standing there. His eyes were bloodshot, his once pristine suit wrinkled and worn. For a moment, Mary considered slamming the door shut, but something in his expression stopped her. "Mary," he muttered, his voice breaking. I didn't come to fight. I don't know where else to go." She studied him carefully. The arrogance, the smirk, the constant superiority, all of it was gone. What stood before her wasn't the brother who had sneered at her for years, but a man stripped bare of pride. "Why now, Tom?" she asked quietly. He swallowed hard. "Because you were right. Dad was right. I ruined everything, and I can't fix it." Mary felt a lump in her throat. This was the moment she had imagined for years, not victory in the courtroom, but hearing her brother admit the truth. Yet it didn't bring the satisfaction she thought it would. Instead, it brought something unexpected. Sorrow. "Tom," she said gently, "you didn't just ruin the business. You ruined us. You ruined family." Tears welled in his eyes. "I know," he whispered, "and I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed to say it." For the first time in decades, silence between them wasn't filled with tension. It was filled with truth. Mary didn't embrace him, didn't offer easy words of comfort, but she also didn't turn him away. And in that small space between resentment and forgiveness, a fragile thread of healing began to form. Weeks later, Mary stood in her father's office, the same office where she had once been told she wasn't fit for leadership. The walls still smelled faintly of cedar, the bookshelves lined with his old volumes, the desk polished to a shine. She placed a framed photograph on the desk, her father, smiling, with a younger Mary at his side. Beneath it, she slid the letter he had written, the one that reminded her she had always been seen. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. "I'll make sure your trust in me wasn't wasted." Mary knew her story was bigger than one courtroom battle. She began speaking at women's leadership conferences, telling her story not as a tale of revenge, but as a lesson in resilience. She poured resources into mentoring young entrepreneurs who, like her, had been underestimated or overlooked. The press began calling her not just the overlooked daughter, but the voice of the overlooked. But perhaps the most powerful moment came at a charity gala 6 months later. As she walked onto the stage, the crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, journalists scribbled notes, and the room fell silent as she began to speak. "I was invisible once," Mary told the audience. "I was told I wasn't good enough, that my place was in the background. My own family dismissed me. But invisibility doesn't mean weakness. It means potential waiting to be seen. And when you're finally seen, the world changes." The room stood still, captivated. She paused, her voice breaking slightly. "I didn't just inherit my father's estate. I inherited his belief in me. And I will spend the rest of my life proving he was right." The crowd rose to their feet in thunderous applause. Mary smiled, not with triumph, but with peace. For the first time in her life, she wasn't proving herself to her family. She was living for herself, for her future, and for those who would follow her path. Later that night, Mary sat on her balcony, looking out at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a message from a stranger. "Your story saved me. I was about to give up, but now, I won't. Thank you." Tears filled her eyes. This was her true legacy. Not money, not titles, not headlines, but hope. Mary leaned back in her chair, breathing in the cool night air. "Dad," she whispered into the stars, "I am my own architect, my own champion, and my own legacy, just like you believed." And with that, she closed her eyes, ready for the next chapter of her life, one not defined by being overlooked, but by being unstoppable. If Mary's journey moved you, imagine how many untold stories are waiting to be heard. Stories of resilience, betrayal, and triumph that inspire us to keep fighting for our place in the world. Don't miss the next chapter. Subscribe to Truth Unraveled, hit the notification bell, and join us as we uncover more real stories that prove one thing: the truth always finds its way to the light.